I'm Maddie.
I'm Blake.
We are happy to have you back with us after our super long Gaylor foray that I still don't feel like I'm totally out of, but we're back with a kind of way different topic this week. Something that I thought would be kind of interested to get into. So, you already saw the Crank books in the doc. When I was in early high school, I read those books and I was like obsessed with them. Like I was addicted to them. They're like free verse poetry sort of, like they're written like weird, like sometimes the text makes pictures and sometimes there's weird line breaks. I don't know.
Okay.
I loved them. And they are, as you can probably see from the photo, they're about drugs.
Yeah, okay, I definitely read the first one.
Yeah. It's about a girl named Christina who tries meth for the first time and then becomes an addict, gets pregnant, is raped, like has a lot of crazy stuff happen. There's three books. I read them and reread them. I read them so many times. I read all of Ellen Hopkins' books. I was like addicted to the gritty, like cool. And definitely I think Crank and Glass, the first two, are like so good. And it actually started because Ellen Hopkins, I believe, actually mostly wrote children's like kind of stuff,
Okay.
I think, before, or maybe like nothing like this before, but it actually started because her actual daughter, whose name, it's not, well, it's not funny, but it's a little bit funny. Her daughter's name is Crystal, but her real life daughter got addicted to meth, and basically it's pretty much about her daughter, but she started it in therapy to help her put herself in her daughter's shoes, and so that
Oh,
she could
wow.
understand her a little bit more and try to like, you know, feel less anger about it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you read the first one, she ends up getting off meth at the very end of it because she's pregnant, but soon after having the baby she gets back on it. And this is all pretty much true to real life. Ellen Hopkins adopted Crystal's first child when they were very young, and Crystal has like five or six other kids, three of
Oh, wow.
which were like missing for a while. Be like Ellen, not like missing to Ellen. So like she
Mhm.
went to on her. When I say just Ellen, it makes me feel like I'm talking about Ellen DeGeneres, which I am definitely not. Like she went on her Facebook to say like we don't know where they are. Like this is the last place that they were. Has gone back and forth between being sober and being back on meth. I mean, we know that methamphetamines are just like not an easy drug to kick. But
Yeah.
anyway, those were great books and they had such a like, well, first of all, because I was young and I was very sheltered and I was very goody two shoes, so like these books were like crazy for me. You know what I mean? Like I could not even. It was very very interesting because it was so different from my life, but it also at the same time felt really like still real. Like it
Yeah.
felt realistic. It didn't feel too crazy. And they did actually one of the periods when the daughter was sober, they did like a book where a bunch of people that were actually affected, like the real characters, actually wrote like short little chapters in this like collection. And the daughter was like, I was shocked to read like how much of the stuff my mom guessed or knew that I totally didn't think that she would have. Like
Wow.
how close she was to understanding this and like knowing the real intentions of people. So
Wow. That's
it's
super
really
interesting.
exactly. I was like I said, it was literally like I, not to be insensitive, like I was addicted to these books. Like I like
Yeah.
could not get enough of them. So did what, you know, most book people do when this kind of thing happens, and I went to Google and Googled books like Crank by Ellen Hopkins. And that brought me to a bunch of suggestions, one of which was Go Ask Alice, which it came out in like the 70s, but it's an anonymous book. It's the repackaged diary of a teenage drug addict.
Whoa.
So I was obviously like 100% in on this. Like, okay, this is exactly what I'm
Yeah.
looking for. So I read it for the first time when I was younger. I read it probably, I reread books a lot, probably another time when I was in college. And then in 2022 or so, there was a podcast that I liked that did an episode on it, and that kind of got me into it, and I learned a lot of new things about it. So we'll we'll go ahead and get started. So I have a little bit of a summary of the book. So the book starts with a foreword, which I do think I need to read in full, which just simply says, "Go Ask Alice" is based on the actual diary of a 15-year-old drug user. It's not a definitive statement on the middle class teenage drug world. It does not offer any solutions. It is, however, a highly personal and specific chronicle. As such, we hope it will provide insights into the increasingly complicated world in which we live. Names, dates, places, and certain events have been changed in accordance with the wishes of those concerned.
Oh my God, I'm already
Yeah.
getting scared.
So, also, just so you know, we call for ease of understanding, we're going to call her Alice, but the title Go Ask Alice is a reference to like, a song about psychedelics and like Alice in Wonderland. That's not her name. We don't know her name because she's a diarist. She's not
Yeah,
writing what her name is.
it's anonymous.
Yeah, it's sort of like The Handmaid's Tale. And similarly also to The Handmaid's Tale where they theorize that her name might be June because of a specific line from another character. In the same vein, Alice's real name might have been Kara, I believe, based on something that another character says later on, but it's never confirmed, and so we're just going to call her Alice because that's
It
easier
makes
in the
sense,
book.
yeah.
Yeah. So after that forward, we're in September 16th, 1968, just so you know about the time period. And the diary ranges, I believe, from 1968 to 1970 or 71. So we're in that kind of era of history.
Slay.
So she starts her diary, and it's just like total normal girl stuff. She bought the diary the day before because the guy that she had a crush on, whose name is Roger. So I'm going to get this journal so I can like get out all of these feelings. But unfortunately, today, the day that she started the journal, he rejected her at school and she was absolutely humiliated. And the next day, she's just like miserable. And this is like a constant theme. She's like a pretty unhappy kid. Like she doesn't really feel like she fully fits in anywhere. So she turns 15 and she's also a constant theme in this book is she's constantly talking about her weight and dieting. And, you know, I went on a date. I had 6 delicious, mouth-wateringly good French fries. Like,
Oh my God.
so that's not really important, but it's just interesting because it's like
Just adds another layer.
womanhood
Yeah.
never changes. It's never changed. Not in the
No,
60s and not now, you know.
that's sad. Poor Alice.
Exactly. So she is constantly talking about her weight, talking about how she hates herself. She's awful, or she's not awful, but she's like that's how she feels.
Yeah.
So her dad's a college professor, and she finds out that he's taken a teaching position at a new university, so they're going to be moving. And she's actually stoked about this because she's like, I hate everyone here. Nobody understands me. I have no friends, and now I'm going to get to do like a whole new fresh start.
Where do they live?
So it's not said in the book, but based on context clues and things that we learn later, probably Utah. So
Like they
it
moved
seems
there?
it seems like they're in Utah that like they lived somewhere in Utah
Oh,
and
and
then
they
they
stayed.
moved somewhere else that was she goes home to visit, so assumingly like within a few hours drive. I mean, we're
Yeah.
in the United States, states are huge. Well, I don't know the size of Utah, but kind of big, right?
It's definitely big, yeah.
It's no Texas, but it's big. So yeah, based on context clues, most likely Utah. She talks about the Great Salt Lake, and I don't know. But we can say you could pretty much probably pick out 2 Utah towns with big universities. Theoretically, maybe Brigham Young University, and then another
You
Mormon-ish university. Yeah, and that is probably roughly where this is set. But we never get those specific types of details. They're gonna move in the new year. It's now going to be Christmas soon. And so it is Christmas. Alice is learning how to sew a dress for a Christmas party with her mom. She's wanting to be like her mom one day, and she wonders if her mom, as an adult, wonders with the same romantic and identity issues as her, or if she felt the same way when she was young. You know, it's very like real, you know,
Wow.
just
I
like
wish she could talk about it with her mom.
I know, in those times it just like wasn't a
Yeah.
thing, you know. It's just I think that the best part of this book is the first part because it just to me it feels so just like growing up and just you know you feel like nobody understands and moms didn't talk to each other as much back then and it's like when
Yeah.
you're a kid you can't imagine that your mom did ever feel the way that you felt. You're like no one's ever felt this way, but it's not true, but it just that's how it feels and that's how she feels. And also in typical teenager fashion, even though Alice is excited to move and have a fresh start, she's also like as they're having Christmas, she's kind of getting a little bit depressed because it's hitting her that like this house that she's always been growing up in, like somebody else is going to live here and they're going to touch all of our pretty painted walls and our banisters with
Yeah.
their dirty fingers and we're not
That's
going to live here
horrifying.
anymore. So she, you know, is sad. And then as the time gets closer, she's starting to also get worried that because it's now the new year, she wakes up and she's just like, what if I don't adjust well? And what if
Yeah.
I don't make friends, and what if I don't reinvent myself, and then that's going to be so hard. So then it's been about a week into their new move, and Alice is still feeling that way. She has younger siblings, and they've already met kids in the neighborhood that they're friends with, and Alice hasn't. Nobody their age really lives that close that she can see so far, and she's like, great, now I'm just miserable here. It's no different. So she meets one friend at school. This is so mean, but also feels kind of a little bit real. She meets a friend at school named Greta, and Alice like hates her. She thinks that she's awkward and unattractive, and she like is like, but this is the only person that'll be friends with me because I'm the same way. I'm also, everyone hates me and everyone hates her, so it's the only person I could be friends with. She even, when Greta comes over, Alice like says that she feels that her parents are ashamed of her for having a friend like Greta. Like, it's so awful, but it's like sort of feels, I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean, it's the very real and raw feelings of a teenage girl
Yeah,
because
she's like, none of the cool people will be friends with me, and my parents are embarrassed that I'm not friends with cool people. Like, I can only get this loser, ugly friend,
I
which
feel
is
like,
awful. Poor Greta.
yeah, I feel like we've all been a Greta and we've all been an Alice.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
That's so crazy.
And it never actually has anything to do with the other person. It's always just yourself. So
Yeah,
it's, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, so Alice is still pretty miserable at this point. We're kind of in the springtime.
clearly.
Alice's mom is like, "Hey, okay, I know that you're hating it, but if you get your grades up, then for the summer you can go stay with your grandparents who live in her hometown." So she's like, "Okay, fine." So she tries to get her grades up. She starts to diet again, which for her is like, I'm getting back on track now. And then she meets a girl named Beth, who is a Jewish girl that lives down the block. And she and Beth are great friends, and her life improves a lot from here. She's really interested in Beth and also her religion, with her being Jewish and Alice being Christian, but seemingly not extremely. I mean, I guess in the 60s and 70s, anyone that was religious was like probably more extreme than,
Yeah.
but
So she's
there's
not
not,
Mormon?
well, she doesn't mention temple or anything like that, so I don't know. But she's definitely not Jewish because she talks to Beth about stuff like that. And they have a very almost early lesbian feeling relationship, but also just in a very sweet way. Like, when Beth leaves for summer camp, they're so devastated because they feel they're the only people that can understand each other.
Aw.
And Alice specifically thinks that Beth going away and not being able to see her for this amount of time is like hurts worse than dying. Like, she would rather die. Like, that's how off. And I totally
I totally get
understand.
it. Yeah.
You finally get one best friend, which she's just going away for summer camp, but still you're like,
The whole summer.
yeah, but then remember, Alice is going to her grandparents. So a little bit
True.
after Beth leaves for summer camp, Alice goes to her grandparents, and she is predictably bored. I mean, I don't know what she expected from going and staying with her grandparents, but she goes to town with her grandfather and is kind of shopping around, and she runs into a girl that used to go to her high school whose name is Jill, and Jill was always more popular than her. So she invites Alice to come over for an autograph party, which would be a party you would throw during the summer after school ended for everyone to come over and do yearbooks.
Oh,
They would just have a whole
interesting.
little gathering.
That's fun, but we
Yeah,
always
and
did it on the last day of school.
so did we. But I mean, it's that's a quaint idea to like have a little party at your house for it. It's fun.
Yeah.
And Alice is so excited, and she's like, "Thank God I actually brought my yearbook." She's like, "Of course, their pictures aren't going to be in my yearbook and mine's not in theirs, but like this is still really exciting," and she's, really excited to go. So Alice goes, and immediately it feels like everyone is being so nice to her. Everyone is so welcoming, and she's like so amazed. So they announce that they're going to play a game called Button, Who Has the Button, I believe. I'm not
Okay.
familiar with it. I believe it was a game popular in the 60s and 70s, it would appear. I guess it's a kids game, but they've adapted it. Basically, what it means is they bring out a big tray of Cokes, as in Coca-Cola Classic, made here in Atlanta, Georgia. And there's 14 of them. 10 of them have LSD in them. 4 of them don't.
What the
And so,
fuck?
so 4 of the people will be like, it's a game that you're playing to, maybe you'll get the LSD or maybe you'll have to be the babysitter, and nobody knows
Oh my
who's gonna do it.
God. I want to
So
play.
yeah, so the problem here is that Alice doesn't know that that's what's happening. So, because she's not in with the cool kids. So, well, she says we're gonna play button who has the button or whatever, but Alice doesn't know what that means, and she doesn't want to seem uncool, so she doesn't ask. Which I wouldn't
Wow.
either. I would probably
Yeah.
I would be like, fun, awesome, yeah. So they all start chilling on the couch, drinking the cokes, and Alice, of course, gets one that has drugs in it.
Oh my fucking God.
But it's actually like because she's so miserable, like she has had such a like I felt so badly for her the whole book. But then when she does LSD, she's explaining how she feels like she's so one with the world that she can from 4 houses away from her, she can smell somebody making this is another hint that it's in Utah, green and white and red ribbed jello, you know, like those jello mold things. She can smell it houses away. She describes it. I'm kind of like hell yeah, like awesome. This is like really helping you in your life. She's
Yeah.
feeling so elated. She's feeling,
It's therapeutic.
yeah, ecstatic. She's uninhibited. She loves it. But of course, after she comes down, she kind of, even though she was really happy with the experience, she has a lot of guilt because she's, kind of a goodie and now she's kind of scared, like, oh, I'm not going to do drugs again. And she's kind of emotionally punishing herself. Like, she's like, can't sleep. She feels so bad that she's done drugs.
Damn.
But then in the back of her mind, even though she's vowing to never do them again, she's like, I wouldn't mind trying weed. Like, I wouldn't, like, She's still kind of curious about it. So she asks Jill if she could maybe get her some weed and also mentions that now that she's talking about this kind of stuff in her diary, she's going to have to lock it up, which I just thought was a teenager thing to say. Like, of course, now I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to hide my diary somewhere so my parents don't read about me doing LSD at a party. So she also decides, she's like, I wish I had someone that I could talk about drugs with, but obviously I can't talk about drugs with my parents. So she decides to go to the library because I mean it was the late 60s. She decides to go to the library and read some books about drugs
That's
and
amazing.
do some research. So on the way to the library, she runs into Bill, who is one of the guys that was at the party, and he babysat her. Just so you know, I'm not bearing the lead at this party. Nothing bad happened to her. She loved it. It was lovely to her. So anyway, they run into each other, and he's like, "Do you want to go on a date tonight?" And she's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So she experiments more with drugs on the date with Bill. What drugs do you think she might have done when she was experimenting with Bill?
I don't know. Weed?
She shoots speed into her arm. Yeah, so just so you know, she went to the party and did acid like without meaning to. She does that on July 8th. On July 20th, she injects speed.
To be honest, I really relate to Alice.
She said, "You know what? Let's try it all. Let's just go for it."
Honestly, slay. At least she's with Bill in a safe environment
Yeah, and
for
she
now.
also she also loves speed. She's like, I feel so uninhibited and I'm like a new better person. Like pretty much all of her drug experiences are like positive and good, to be honest.
Injecting it on your second time doing drugs ever is crazy.
Like not a snort, not a I don't know what was popular, how it was popular to do it
Oh,
in the
true.
60s, I guess. Maybe they hadn't thought of that yet. I
Yeah,
don't
maybe
know.
needles were like the way. That's
Intravenous.
crazy.
So she does the speed. She loves it. But 3 days later, her grandfather has a small heart attack, and she immediately feels that it's her fault because
Because
she's
of
been
the
doing
speed.
drugs and doing bad things. She's being punished by her grandfather having a heart attack. She's also, at the same time, she's worried that she's going to get sent home because of this. And she's like, fuck, if I get sent home, I will not be able to get any drugs because I don't know
Shit.
anyone there, so I'm not gonna have any drugs. So she starts to feel that way where she's like a little bit panicked, like if I get sent home I'm not gonna have any drugs to do. But then she also decides that even though drugs are beautiful, she describes them as being beautiful, she feels that there's just something wrong about it and that she should probably not do them anymore. And she actually decides like if I have to go home then I'll just go home. But she doesn't end up going home. She ends up staying and she helps her grandmother take care of her grandfather. But she avoids her friends because she's worried that if she goes and hangs out with them, she'll do drugs. Obviously, she's right. Because she goes to a party at Bill's a few days later and she takes acid and sits for hours just examining her hand and having a great time.
Hell
And
yeah.
a few days after that, she loses her virginity to Bill on acid, which is kind of crazy because her crush Roger from the beginning, who rejected her, She like has such a like big crush on him. She actually said that she couldn't imagine ever sleeping with anyone but him. And if she had to die a virgin, then she would to like it's crazy. So like she's moving on. Slay. She loses her virginity to Bill in a line that's like both, I think, real but also sad a little bit. She basically says that she thought that losing her virginity would be painful or that maybe it would be special, but instead it's just another brilliant, freaky way out part of the world around her, and she doesn't see it as like a big thing. Like she's looking at it differently. I don't know.
Honestly, I like that.
It's interesting. Although she pretty much immediately begins to crash out about the possibility of being pregnant, which is totally fair because 1968. So if she's pregnant, she's like pretty much absolutely totally screwed. Like
Yeah.
she can't get an abortion, I wouldn't think. Right? Especially
No.
in Utah in
Yeah.
1968. And obviously in those times, if you got pregnant at that age, you like got sent away to a like right like it's
I don't
crazy.
know.
You weren't just a teen mom in the 70s, I don't
True,
believe.
yeah.
Not commonly. I think a lot of like that's when it was popular for your daughter to like go away to a school, and then all of a sudden later the mom has a baby that
Yeah, like they had those like pregnant facilities for
yeah. And
teens.
like the mom, and then they just raised the kid as like the younger sibling of, I'm pretty sure that was common.
I've definitely heard that. I don't know how common
I mean,
or
hell, they did it on Desperate Housewives. That wasn't that long ago.
Oh
Remember
yeah.
with
That's
Danielle?
how I know about all that. Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
Maybe all people should lose their virginity on acid.
Like sounds good. My main issue with it is just the fact that she's 15. And I feel like
Yeah,
losing your virginity on acid at 15 is
it's
pretty crazy.
it's a big fucking
But
thing.
the thing is that like for the most part in all of these instances, especially the acid, like shooting speed in your arm, you probably could have gone without doing that.
Yeah.
But all the acid that you're doing, like I'm really glad that you're experiencing happiness and joy because you haven't been this whole diary. So Roger and his family, her crush that rejected her after asking her out, comes to visit her grandfather because he's their family friends.
Okay.
And he, had a little scare with his mild heart attack. As soon as Roger shows up, Alice is like crumbling basically. She's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe all this shit that I've done and now he's here." And she just wants to throw herself in his arms. But then he asks her out and they kiss and all of her
Oh my God.
expectations are fulfilled. But he's going off to military school soon. So they don't have a lot of time together before he goes away. And Alice is like, her heart's gonna explode. She can't believe this. Like, she's so obsessed with him. But now, just a few days ago, she lost her virginity to some other guy, and she feels so guilty about it now and so disgusted. And she's like, what if he finds out somehow? What if he finds
Some
out about all the drugs that I did too? He'll probably not want to be with me anymore if I do that. And she starts ignoring Roger's calls when he calls the house because she feels so guilty and she has no one to talk to about this or to like help her sort out her feelings. So she starts taking her grandfather's sleeping pills because she's literally up all night. She can't sleep because she's like being eaten alive by guilt about the drugs and losing her virginity and stuff, which also feels pretty, I mean, especially in those times, seems pretty realistic to me.
fascinating.
So then it's now August, school's gonna start again soon, and Alice goes home. She thinks for some reason that, like, and I think we all kind of feel like this when we're teenagers, that like now that she's going home, her parents are gonna be able to look at her and tell that she's not a
Yeah.
virgin anymore and that she's done drugs and that she's done this, that, and the other. But they don't, and they like are acting the same. They still are acting loving. So she's like put at ease by that, and she decides that she's gonna repent. She's gonna start fresh again. She's not gonna do all that again. But she's also still worried about being pregnant because she hasn't gotten her
Mm.
period, and she is still taking the sleeping pills at night. And she actually, in fact, finishes all of her grandfather's and goes to the doctor to get more for herself. And so he does. He gives her really strong ones actually,
Damn.
and so she's taking tranquilizers to sleep.
Holy shit.
But then she does get her period, and so that takes a big weight off of her, and she's kind of like, okay, my fresh start, we're good. I'm not pregnant from here on out.
Yeah.
Everything is going to be smooth. Beth comes back from camp, her neighbor, her BFF Beth, and it's not the same anymore. Alice perceives Beth as being changed. I think it's more likely that Alice has changed and doesn't feel connected with Beth in the same way. Not that I'm like sticking with the narrative that like, doing drugs changes you. But I think that she probably feels that Beth is kind of juvenile. But then also, on the crush note, she also feels really jealous of Beth's new boyfriend that she made at camp
Mm,
and feels like he's monopolizing all of her time. And
okay.
so I think she also,
Yeah.
like I said, not necessarily lesbian, but definitely like deep, intimate relationship with a woman, and it's complex and it's just interesting. So Alice goes to a little boutique to shop, and she runs into a girl named Chris, who's kind of a hippie and teaches Alice how to iron her hair. So pretty crazy, you know,
Slay.
70s laying your head on the thing and ironing it. Her parents do not like this. They're like, you look like a hippie. This is awful, because that's the kind of thing that parents freaked out about. Like, don't flatten iron your hair. It's crazy. I mean, they didn't even have flat irons yet because nobody did that. They literally used an iron. It's nuts. So her parents aren't loving that she's flat ironing her hair. But Chris, who works at this boutique, is a really slay, like cool, fun, you know, cool jewelry, cool hair, flat iron. She's slay.
Yeah.
And she finds out in September that Roger's not going to be home again until Christmas, and she's heartbroken by this, but she writes that she's going to wait for him and they're going to have a long distance relationship. And then she visits Chris again at the store and talks to her about Roger, and Chris is like, "Oh, I'm so sad. I'm so sad for you. Here's a pill to pop you up." And Alice is like, "Yeah."
Oh my
Takes it.
God. What
She
is the pill?
I'm assuming some kind of stimulant, methamphetamine, something, because it peps her up and she gets a bunch of energy. She does a whole bunch of chores, and she's in fact so hyperactive that she goes back to her sleeping pills and takes a
Oh my
tranquilizer so she
God.
can chill
It's
back out again.
Adderall.
Yeah, literally, literally. Alice's parents are continuing to get more and more mad at her for being hippie-ish with her flat ironed hair and stuff. And in fact, she started to say things about not understanding the establishment and like, you know, hippie stuff like that.
That's funny.
And she gets a lot of this from Chris. And Alice gets a job at the same store as Chris, so they're working together at the boutique and they become very good friends. And Alice even reflects that she thinks that Chris is her best friend yet.
Oh,
I know. And then school starts, and she and Chris are popular at school. So Alice now, because of Chris and how slay and everything, now Alice is popular too. Everything's going well. She feels very attractive and thin because she keeps taking these pills that make her not eat and do a bunch of chores and go crazy.
jeez.
Yeah, literally. She says she pops a Benny, which is I'm pretty sure Bennies are speed too. So every time that she's tired or hungry, she pops one of these pills.
What the hell?
I know.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
As a
I guess they
teen
were kind of easy. Remember, she's 15.
in the 70s, like all of that was
I guess you
so
could just find it.
unregulated.
Yeah, you could just
Like,
like go.
and I
It's
feel like
pretty nuts.
doctors were so, like, they were prescribed happy back then. Like, crazy.
Definitely, definitely.
Like,
Especially with amphetamines, she's doing crazy stuff. Chris has a friend named Richie who's in college, and he finally, for the first time, after she's injected speed, done bennies, done all of this, she finally tries weed for the first time.
oh my
And
God.
I know, and she really is fucking with weed. So it's slay. She experienced like a new depth of physical sensation, and then Richie's like, "Oh well, if you like smoking with all of us, here's some joints to take home with yourself, and you can smoke by yourself and see how you like that." So she's loving it, and Chris is actually dating Richie's friend Ted, and so eventually Alice starts dating Richie, and so they're both dating these college guys, and they,
Wait, what about,
I know,
what
she's not waiting
about,
for him, Roger.
damn.
Sorry, Roger. She's got a guy that has drugs and is here. Long distance relationships when you're 15, are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
no.
No, it's not gonna work. Especially back then they had to send letters.
Yeah, true. Oh my God. Like, when you're long distance, like, that person's really just gone.
Literally. At least now we have FaceTime, text, phone calls. Back then it was literally like a letter every, if you're lucky, every few weeks. But realistically,
Wow.
probably, right? More time than that.
Things were
Especially if he's far away.
so different. Can't even imagine.
I bet every man cheated. There was no. Think about how much evidence we can get now on men, and back then,
People could just do whatever the hell they want.
literally, it's insane to think about crime now versus crime then. They are in love with the two college boys, and they obviously are loving doing drugs, but they're children, so they don't have a lot of money. So Richie and Ted help them start to sell acid. So they start selling
Oh
acid.
my God.
Because at first Richie's like, "Well, you guys can sell weed," and Alice was like, "Well, it's way easier to sell acid because it's littler." and so we can
True.
hide it better. And I mean, women always.
Always
So,
thinking.
exactly, they are selling acid, and Alice is so obsessed with Richie, and he is kind of serious, though. He has his sights on medical school. He's very dedicated to school, and he only has sex with her when they're doing drugs, and she really wants to try having sex sober, but he always kind of like pushes her off.
That's weird.
So, in October, Alice sells LSD to children in an elementary school playground. Where did the kids get the money? Crazy, crazy.
Oh my fucking God.
But she feels very guilty about it, and she says that
Okay.
she's never going to do that again.
Okay.
She regrets it. And then we're going to get a little bit homophobic for a minute. I'm not going to read the quotes that she says because we don't need to. But basically, she and Chris go to Richie's apartment, and Richie and Ted are having sex together.
Oh,
Richie didn't want to have sex with Alice when he was sober because
he's gay.
he's gay. But this was a different time. Alice is allowed to feel betrayed by this. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
She's allowed to feel betrayed. Obviously, this is like crazy. Of course, they're betrayed in more of a homophobic way.
Yeah.
So they're disgusted. They decide that they're going to run away to San Francisco, and they're going to go ahead and rat out Ted and Richie to the cops and get their apartment raided. They're like, fuck them. Fuck them. So they snitch on them and run away to San Francisco.
Wait, she's still 15?
Yes.
Wait, okay. So back then you could like report gay people to the police and they
No,
were
no, no. For drugs. They snitch on them for the drugs. Not for being gay.
I literally thought they did. Okay, that makes more sense.
Anyway, so they run away and they decide that they're gonna try to stay clean and they're gonna run away and have a new life. They move into a really crappy one-bedroom apartment. Obviously, what can two teenagers afford? And she's pretty depressed here. She pretty much immediately wants to turn around and go back home. But because she ratted on them, she's like, I can't go back home because then they're gonna come after me.
Yeah.
Like not the police, but like other people that were involved with their drug dealing thing. They're gonna come and like, you know,
Are her parents not looking for her?
presumably they are. I think that she leaves a note or something, but she does not tell them where they're going. But I mean, there was no cell phones. There was
Yeah,
no
that's
Life
crazy.
360.
Your
So you
kid
can
could
just no, you can just get on a train and leave,
Jeez.
and no one ever know where you went ever again.
That's kind of freeing.
It's pretty crazy. Definitely cannot do that these days. So Alice gets a job in a lingerie store, and Chris starts working at a boutique with this stung a little bit. This woman named Sheila, who they describe as super glamorous and super beautiful, and she is an older woman. She's a well-preserved 30.
Well preserved.
Well-preserved, I'm 27.
Well preserved is fucked
They're like,
up.
she looks great for 30. Granted, to be fair, this was 1968, so I don't know if they were using sunscreen. Sheila was probably smoking
True.
100,000 cigarettes a day.
True.
So, whatever. It still just was like, oh my god, kind of crazy.
That's
So, Sheila, you know, she has long fake eyelashes, beautiful. I mean, yeah, she's just a very glamorous, kind of rich, alluring older woman to them. Which, granted, when you're 15, a 30-year-old person is really old to you. That's
Yeah.
double your age.
true.
So Sheila eventually, I believe Alice quits her job at the lingerie store and starts working at Sheila's store too. So they both work there and they love Sheila, get along with her great. And so eventually Sheila's like, we're actually having a party at my house. Would you two girls like to come? And Alice is super excited, but kind of like scared because she's like, there's going to be adults here. And Sheila's so glamorous and classy. Like, I wonder if they're going to think I'm just a little kid. And like, what if I want to drink Coke instead of champagne? What are they going to think? So they go to Sheila's house, which is like a beautiful, dazzling apartment. You know, it seems beautiful to them. They decide to smoke weed when they're there. So they start smoking weed at the party and they sleep in the bathroom, I think. Which is weird. I'm like, you got so high you slept in the bathroom. Never happened to me. And they don't really remember last night that much. Like, but they're back in the drugs, okay? They're back in the drugs now. And Alice also is like, if I'm going to keep doing this, I need to get on the pill, which was a new thing back then. And she even laments on how getting on the pill is probably going to be harder than it is for her to find drugs, which is probably true in that
True.
time. And
That's
it's pretty crazy
wild.
to think about. So she's like, I got to get on the pill if I'm going to start doing this because I can't have this anxiety every time I have sex. Because she thinks
Wait,
she
did
might have
she-
had, she thinks she might have. She doesn't really remember it. She kind of like had a blackout. So
That's scary.
yeah. They kind of start to see Sheila, who's, independently wealthy, a party girl, like she's kind of their role model a little bit, which, like, same, I guess. Like, mysteriously rich lady, owns her own little clothing store, very slay, has parties in her swanky apartment.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I mean, she seems on the surface pretty great.
I want to be her.
Exactly. So they start going to Sheila's parties all the time, just like whenever they're doing lots of drugs. However, one night they decide to try heroin. And this is when Alice kind of comes to and realizes that this whole time Sheila and her boyfriend have been getting them super drugged and then raping them.
Oh,
So, just saying, obviously, I don't think Sheila's a role model for doing that.
I hate Sheila.
It's awful. It's
I
pretty
don't want to be
disgusting.
like her at all.
So,
Ew, wait, I'm actually disgusted.
it's really disturbing. So, Alice decides, well, both of them decide that they're going to kick the drugs. They're also going to totally run away again and reinvent themselves somewhere else in California to get away from Sheila because they don't think they could ever see her face again. Obviously, they're not addressing it like the way that it should be addressed in this kind of thing, but I mean, she probably didn't have the words to describe how that made her feel.
Yeah, I mean, oh my
They're just like, we just
God.
have to leave. It's awful. So and then this is also like a cute little point where there's like this little bubble of like unrealistic happiness almost. So they move to Berkeley, I believe, and they find a little apartment that has like a little store space under it. And since Chris is kind of smart with business, she's been working in a lot of retail stores, they actually open a little jewelry store. They open their own little store.
Wait, that's so
And they
cute.
like reupholster the chairs and they make it like sleigh and hip in there. And teenagers come and use it as a hangout and they put songs in the stereo and they have sodas in this little fridge that they sell for 50 cents each. It's like this little bubble of like kind of cuteness. The teenagers come and hang out in their store, but she kind of is like annoyed by them, sort of. I guess she feels kind of more adult and she's like, all they talk about is drugs and what they're doing next. And like, it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
do they not ever think about anything more important than that? But even though they opened their own business, like things were going pretty well, it is approaching Christmas now at this point. And Alice is really sad. And she decides that she's going to get up the guts to actually call her parents for the first time. Her parents haven't heard from her since she ran away. She's 15 years old.
That's
Um, and so she does. She calls them. And her family is like, please come back. Please, we don't care. We love you so much. We want you to come back more than anything. Like, we don't care that you ran away. We don't care what you did. We're not going to be mad. Please just come
yeah.
home. And so she and Chris decide to. And so she flies back home. Her entire family picks her up at the airport. And then it's Christmas, and she feels so supported and alive. And she feels like her family is accepting her more as an adult now than they did before, which is helping her feel better about her
Yeah.
relationship with them because they don't feel like she's treating them as a little kid. She reflects on how difficult it is to figure out who you are and what you want to do when you're an adolescent. Now that she's feeling supported more by her parents, she feels pretty good, and she's hoping that the worst times have now passed and now she's back and she's going to be able to be on track again. So she starts school, and immediately all the people she used to do drugs with are like, hey, do you have drugs? Hey, are you selling? Hey, do you have this? And she's like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. But they keep bothering her. And so she goes home and is like, Mom, I'm going to be really vulnerable with you right now. People that I used to do drugs with are like hassling me about it all the time. Like, we need to plan stuff to do as a family on the weekends so that they're not like bothering me and like trying to get me to go to parties and that kind of stuff. So they do. But then they start to get more strict, and they want her to be going to a psychiatrist, and she hates the psychiatrist, and so then she starts doing drugs in secret again. Then the book notes that the remaining diary entries are recorded on scraps of paper without dates. She hitchhikes to Denver. She eventually ends up in a clinic where they clean her up, and she's in a drug stupor this whole time. So we're not getting a ton of details. She's in Denver. She goes to a clinic, gets some vitamins, but she won't tell anyone who she is because she doesn't want them to call her parents. She meets a girl named Doris who's like, yeah, you can stay at my apartment. And Alice is just constantly thinking about drugs and food because she can't afford either. So her withdrawal from drugs makes her more depressed, more lonely. And Doris is only like 14, and she had a bunch of sexual abuse in her life that, and when she tells Alice about it, it makes her more depressed. And then they hitchhike back to Southern California.
Damn.
She goes to like a political rally in California and takes more drugs, and she's starting to feel like life is beautiful again on drugs. At this point, she is starting to feel that she is attracted to females sexually, but feels very, very guilty about that. And she has basically sunk to the level of exchanging sexual favors for drugs slash money for drugs. She's
That's sad.
giving people oral for drugs.
That's really sad.
Eventually, yeah, eventually she finds herself talking with a priest about why kids might want to run away from home, and he convinces her to call her parents. She calls them, and again, to her surprise, they're like, please, can you come back? We love you. Can you please come back home? We don't, like, we just want you to be with us, like, regardless. And so she does go back again. And again, just like last time in the cycle, she can't believe all the depraved things that she did. She feels so guilty. And then she feels really inspired and feels like she wants to become a child therapist or child psychologist that could help other kids that are on drugs, because she feels like she has two options in her life at this point, which are either one, to commit suicide,
Wow.
or two, to help others. And so she decides that she's going to commit herself to becoming like a child psychiatrist to help kids that are like her. So she is really like, rejuvenated kind of when she gets back and she's with her family. She's like thinking about the ways that she'll explain drugs to kids when she's finally a counselor. She says that she's going to be honest and explain the pleasure of drugs, because she doesn't think that, adults just want to scare you. They never talk about how drugs are really, really fun, but that they're not worth it in the long run, is what she's going to tell the kids. She starts to go back to school, and then the cycle kind of is repeating with all of her old friends are hassling her for drugs. And now she has the super, super unfortunate thing where all of her old friends that all do drugs she can't hang out with anymore, because they're like being really mean to her that she's not on drugs. They're trying to push her to do drugs again. They're trying to get drugs from her. But then all of the straight lace kids don't want to hang out with her either, because she was, I mean, obviously it's awful, but it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess once you're at the point where you're hitchhiking to Denver and giving blowjobs for drugs, like you can't just go back to high school and
Yeah.
just like, and everyone's just like, hey Alice, how are you? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
obviously that wasn't gonna work out. So she's super like depressed. And she also is like, it's how is it that I've had like all of these sexual experiences at this point, but I still feel like I'm inexperienced in like the conventional ways, because I've only had sex and done stuff when I've been on drugs, and I wish I would just like meet a nice boy and like have a normal sexual experience.
Yeah.
So she's super lonely, and she basically just studies all the time because she doesn't have anything else to do, because nobody will be her friend anymore. So her grandfather then has a stroke, and Alice kind of gets obsessed with this idea with like death, and she says that she knows that when you die you go to heaven and you'll be with your dead loved one and God, but for some reason the idea of your body rotting in the ground and being eaten by worms really disturbs her, and she basically gets obsessed with this idea for the rest of the book. She kind of keeps going back to it.
Interesting.
Alice's father takes her to an anti-war rally at the university. This makes her feel very adult, and she, really appreciates him doing that. And somebody at school plants a joint in her purse and tries to get her in trouble for it, but instead she just goes straight to her dad and explains it, and he's like, okay, how about this? You can start studying at the university library here so that you can have somewhere to go where they can't bother you. So she starts doing that, and she meets this really, really nice guy named Joel, and he walks her over to his dad's office, and Alice, explains that she's still in high school and everything. And Joel is this really stand-up dude that is an orphan. Both of his parents died. He's going to college at the university, but he's working as a janitor at the university to pay for it.
Wow.
70s things could not pay for college on a janitor salary these days. But anyway, she really, really likes him. And her dad likes him a lot, and even says like, hey, Joel should come over for dinner next, like tomorrow or whatever, to have dinner with all of us. And she is fantasizing about marrying him, fantasizing about growing up and being a wife with Joel. Like she's instantly like, teenager things. She's like,
Yeah.
he's the most special, amazing, perfect guy that I've ever seen. So then, if you remember Jan, the first girl that got Alice on drugs, Jan is supposed to be babysitting a kid for a neighbor, but she doesn't show up. So Alice fills in for her unexpectedly. But unfortunately, partway through the night, Jan does show up super, super high and is like, let me watch the baby because I need the money. You can go home. And Alice is like, you can't take care of a child when you're high as fuck.
Yeah.
So she calls Jan's parents and they come and get her because Alice, she doesn't know what to do. And obviously this makes everyone bully her 10 times worse because she called and snitched on her to her parents. And her grandmother starts getting sick. All the kids are bullying her. They're now saying that they're gonna like get her little sister into drugs then. They're being super evil. They're still trying to plant drugs on her and get her in trouble. And then her grandmother dies too. So now she's revisiting that obsession with maggots eating the body. She's like obsessed, they can't stop thinking about it. And she decides to open up to Joel about some of the things that she did in the past. And she's scared, that he'll think differently of her, but he's really supportive and accepting of her. And so then school's out, so the drug kids can't come and bother her anymore. So she gets a babysitting job. And then the next thing we know, we're in a different journal, and Alice is in the hospital. And she doesn't really remember how she ended up here, but she can only think that the worms that she's been fixated on are now eating her alive. And she has bitten her own fingers down to the bone.
Wait, actually?
Yes, she clawed up her face and all of her body. She's super paranoid. She's scared that a fly is going to come into her hospital room and lay eggs on her, and then she'll have maggots growing on her. And she rips out her hair. She's like really
What?
bad off.
What the hell?
So what happened is that when she was babysitting, somebody had planted acid chocolate covered peanuts, and she ate one while she was babysitting to trip her without her knowing it. And she still doesn't really remember what happened. Her body starts to heal, but her hands, she's bitten her fingers truly so badly that they're not going to be healed for probably a year.
Oh my God.
She says. And then her mom comes to the hospital and brings her a big bunch of letters that Joel's written her. And then Alice finds out that she's being sent to an asylum. Her dad explains that it's because when all of this was brought before a juvenile court, Jan and another one of the friends testified that Alice was selling drugs at school, even though she wasn't. And then basically she starts to learn what happened. She was babysitting. She took the acid and she started freaking out and screaming, and the couple heard her and came running back to check on the baby, and they had to lock her in a closet, and she slammed her head against the floor until she got in a concussion, and she was having a very serious crisis, clearly. And Alice is more scared of going to the asylum than she is of the worms eating her alive. She's so scared. So she goes to the mental hospital, and she's terrified by the people there. She's terrified by the building. She hates it. She meets a lot of very interesting characters, like a 13-year-old Babby who was a prostitute at 13 years old. Alice is trying to pray, but she doesn't even feel like that has any meaning or anything to her anymore. She just wishes that she would die. She starts going to group therapy, sort of, to just so at least she's not in her room. But her mom and dad visit her kind of often, and they believe her that she was dosed, that she didn't do drugs on purpose. And they're bringing her letters from Joel. And then her dad tells her that Jan actually retracted her statement, and they're trying to get the other girl to do the same thing so that they can get her out of the asylum. And eventually they do. So she goes home, and she's really happy. And she's like, I'm definitely never, obviously, doing drugs again. It's so not worth the whole trouble. And she also is thinking about Joel and how he's the only good thing in her life, and she's going to not have sex again until she's married to Joel because she's so serious and he's so special to her. In September, Alice gives her father a sweater and a poem by her for his birthday. Joel shows up and kisses her on the lips in front of her whole family and gives her a friendship ring, which she vows to wear for the rest of her entire life. And then she comments that she doesn't feel she needs a diary anymore because she got the diary to write all of these things that she didn't have anyone to talk about with, but now she feels like she has people to talk about.
Aww.
So it's really sweet. Unfortunately, there's an epilogue, and the epilogue explains that Alice died 3 weeks later of an overdose. Whether it was premeditated or accidental remains unclear, and she was just one of the thousands of drug deaths that year. It's horrible, but it's captivating, right?
I knew
it's
this was
captivating.
coming.
Yeah. So that's the book.
So she died at like 16?
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful.
How do we know that someone didn't dose her again? That's how she died.
We don't. It says we don't know if it was intentional or if it was somebody doing that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because thousands of people die from drugs every single year.
It does matter.
It matters to me. This diary was published anonymously in 1971, and it popped off. It was translated into 16 languages, and it was obviously kind of published at the height of the psychedelic era, so it was really hitting a good culture pulse point at that.
Do we know, is it her family who published it? Obviously.
We're gonna find out. This was also it was around the time that Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret was published. YA was kind of emerging. In fact, depends on who you're talking to. It could be considered one of the books that came closest to being like a YA phenomenon.
Young
Obviously, it
adult.
would never, yeah, it would never be able to compete with like Harry Potter or Hunger Games in this era, but in that time, there was no media for this age range of kids.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of in a strange, twisted way, kind of like the Hunger Games or something. Like everyone was wanting to get their hands on it, especially because
Interesting.
obviously it was extremely censored for
Really?
for obvious reasons. I mean, it was very graphic, lots of sex, lots of rape, lots of drugs,
But so they censored
which
all of that?
well, no, I mean like people tried to ban it from libraries, they tried to ban it from schools, which is
Like
only making
society,
yeah,
society.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So obviously that's just making kids though want to get their hands on it. And so literally hugely, hugely popular, not only though with kids, but also with adult readers. Adult readers also really, really enjoyed it to the point that libraries had a hard time keeping enough books in stock for the amount of people that were coming to try to check it out. And then in 1973, there was a TV movie made about it. So it actually had like some kind of big names in it. Like it has William like
Shatner?
Shatner, yes, and Andy Griffith, and has a few kind of surprisingly popular people. The movie was really popular as well to the point that librarians said that every time that the movie was broadcast on the air, they had to place orders for new
Oh
books
my
because
God.
every time it was broadcast, it would bring in a wave of people coming to read it.
Wow.
So by 1975, more than 3 million copies had been sold. By 1979, the paperback edition had already been reprinted 43 times, like 43
Wow.
batches. The book remained continuously in print over the following decades. So by 1998, when I was born, it had sold over 4 million copies, and by 2009, over 5 million copies. So like
Damn.
obviously it was most famous in the 70s, but it still like in modern day was selling a lot of books.
I've never even heard of this book.
Yeah, so kind of a phenomenon. There's probably a reason for that. Okay, so it's selling like crazy. And then you also have to remember that since so many of the copies were sold in the 70s, 80s, 90s, we have to assume it sold over 5 million copies, but way more people than that read it because libraries, because you're lending books to your friends. Because, first of all, if you get this edgy book that's so crazy and that people are trying to get off the shelves, you're going to be like, okay, guys, I got it, and give it to all your friends so
True,
everyone can
yeah.
read it. And this is also probably the only source that kids of this age range can get to this kind of material, sort of. Like, it's pretty
True.
vulnerable, very risque, especially for the time period.
Yeah.
So making lots of money, been called the one of the most famous anti-drug books that have ever has ever been published, and initially pretty much had all positive reviews. Nobody really, because when you read the book, it's not written amazingly, but obviously you don't really examine it in that way because it's written
It's
by
a,
a teenage girl.
yeah,
So you're
it's a
like, whatever.
diary. It's not
But
supposed to be like well written.
yeah, but it's still, they call it extraordinary, a document of horrifying reality that possesses literary quality. Years after the publication, it continued to receive good reviews, often in the context of defending the book against being banned or being censored. However, starting in the 90s, it started to get some criticism for it being like very heavy handed. They felt very melodramatic, and people started to think that it wasn't a real teenager's diary and that it was fictional. A few years ago, in 2022, I listened to a podcast called You're Wrong About, and an episode popped up about Go Ask Alice. And obviously, I was interested in that because, I hadn't thought about it in a while, hadn't read it in a while, but I remembered the way it made me feel. And I remember when I was a kid finishing the book, I felt so empty and hollow and like you don't even get an open-ended maybe something good happened. Even though some of it reads weird, to me I thought it read weird because of the 70s slang. I just didn't really get everything because they talk so differently. Anyway, I decided to listen to the podcast. It was 3 parts, and the third part had a guest on it named Rick Emerson. He was on to give some insight on the book as well as to promote his book that is called Unmask Alice.
Oh my God.
So, as it turns out, this diary was a complete fraud.
No!
And that is not even the worst part.
Oh, fuck.
So let's talk about a lady called Beatrice Sparks.
No.
She was born in 1917, and her story is that she was born in a mining camp on a train. We can't really trust anything because she is a seemingly pathological liar, but her parents had a whole bunch of kids and then scandalized themselves by being in Utah and getting a divorce. So then her mom was a single mom of 5 kids that worked at a restaurant, and Beatrice decided to drop out of high school and go work at the restaurant as well. By 18, she fell in love with a Mormon guy named Levon Sparks, and they got married and moved to his home to start a dry cleaning business. And then he made an investment in some kind of oil thing that ended up paying off, and they became super, super rich in oil money. So they moved to LA, where Beatrice started raising her younger sister as well as kids of her own. And they're just like filthy rich. So she starts publishing poetry, plays, bunches of little articles. She's writing and she's enjoying it for fun. And she can do this because she doesn't have to be paid because she's so rich. And she writes under her own name. Sometimes she writes as B Sparks or Busy Bee or Susan Livorn. She writes under a lot of pseudonyms, which is interesting. For example, under a pen name, it's kind of iconic a little bit. Under a pen name, she writes a profile on herself, and in that profile, she cites a different article, which she also wrote about herself under a different pen name.
Oh my
Which
God.
and that article, the third removed article that she wrote about herself, is basically talking about how she's such a promising young poet because of 2 poems that she had printed in a different thing. So, yeah, and
Wow.
she
Damn.
she had an advice column in a romance comic, I guess, that was really popular. But mysteriously, a lot of the people who wrote letters into the column had the same names as her relatives or had a way of speaking that sounded a lot like her. So she's kind of building this scam reputation as being a promising young writer. Eventually, her son starts college at BYU, obviously, and Beatrice and her husband move to a mansion in Provo, Utah, which, as you know, or may not know, I'm assuming you do, is like the fraud capital of the world. And she starts working for an MLM.
Oh
And
God.
it's this MLM where she writes essays that are for women, like how to be positive when you have all of your
Mm,
kids, how to have a happy home, stuff like that, how to
yeah.
raise kids with manners. And she records them, and then those vinyls are sold to people as the MLM product. In this MLM, she's working with this guy named Art Linkletter, who I was not familiar with. Sorry, people, but he's most known for the original segment of Kids Say the Darndest Things.
Yeah, I
So
don't know.
he was like a TV personality.
Okay.
So they were kind of selling these 5 album sets as part of the MLM. Didn't last very long because those things very rarely do. But she did reconnect with Art Linkletter later because his daughter committed suicide at 69. Before she died, allegedly she told her friend that she was feeling so suicidal because she didn't feel that she would ever get a job or anything with her own merit because of who her dad was and because of being a woman.
Wow.
And she was worried that she would just always be like in this shadow and never would be able to feel proud of herself for anything. But unfortunately, and I mean, you know, everyone in this story is human and he's far from the most evil character. Art, obviously, hearing this is not going to work for him because that makes him feel somewhat responsible in a way for his daughter killing herself. So he learns that she had taken LSD before, and instead he decides to conclude that she killed herself while having an LSD flashback.
Okay.
This is also the time of Nixon, and Art becomes like a very vocal, committed anti-drugs person because of that. He's preaching on the idea that this is why his daughter is dead because of drugs. He's taking it literally to the White House. He starts a campaign against psychedelic drugs, and Richard Nixon, you know, tries to flip that, and this starts it was not only Art Linkletter, from my understanding, but the war on drugs starts to kick off. So Beatrice had at that time been volunteering at a local hospital and trying to help troubled youth. And so when she found out about Art and what had happened to his daughter, she sent him a manuscript called Buried Alive, The Diary of an Anonymous Teenager. And he gets it and is immediately like, this is gold. This is exactly like what happened to my daughter. So she obviously was wanting to publish this book and she wanted to be famous for it. But the publishing house is basically like, it's not going to sell very well if it's fiction. It's going to be better if
Yeah.
everyone thinks it's real? And so, like, this is an excerpt from something that her lawyers wrote. It says, as you already know, Miss Sparks is dedicated to assisting young people and is willing to remain anonymous in order to get the message before the public. So the book gets published, and like we just talked about, is a massive success, a sensation, really. And obviously, Beatrice is fucking pissed because
Yeah.
she's written the most famous book in America right now, and nobody knows that she wrote it. Not even, her local newspaper isn't even talking about her. She's getting no attention for it. And so she writes a second book under her own name, and it doesn't really sell very well. And then with her third book, she says that it was a series of interviews that she did with runaways titled Voices, and it was a bunch of different teenage testimonies that also didn't sell very well. So then she seems to realize that, okay, my name's not on the cover, but that doesn't mean I can't go out and start talking about how I made this book. Not wrote it, because what she says is that it was a diary that was sent to her by the parents, because for a long time she was a therapist and she got these things from therapy patients. Sometimes she's a doctor. Sometimes she got her doctorate from BYU. Sometimes she got it from someplace in California. She changes it up all the time. She's a
Wow.
psychologist, she's a therapist, she's this, she's that, and that's how she gets all of these things. Pretty much none of that appears to be true. But she does start talking about how, she's the one that put this diary together and everything. And her first interview was with the Daily Herald in Provo, Utah, and it was read by a woman named Marcella Barrett. And just like that, Beatrice was able to re-enter the diary business. So, Marcella's son's name was Alden Barrett, and he was, in her opinion, brilliant but troubled, and he had recently committed suicide. And Marcella felt like this was fate because she saw Sparks call him. Sparks was also a Mormon, just like her, and she only lived 9 miles away. And she actually thought to herself, maybe this was why God allowed my son to die, because now I can send his journal that I have to Beatrice, and she will be able to publish it and help other kids that have mental illnesses, just like how she's helping by putting this diary together and releasing it. She helped people with drugs and to
Wow.
understand. So she sends her recently deceased son's journal to Beatrice for her to do the same thing. And she agreed to publish it, and said that she would let her know and send it to her before she published it. But Beatrice really sucks. She, and obviously she was going to fictionalize things. That's, obviously to be understood. She's not going to just completely publish it as is, but she changed it quite a lot, especially because this was the eve of the Satanic Panic, and people would not want to hear
Uh,
about a boy that had depression and killed himself. They want to hear about the occult. So,
oh my God.
yeah. So she used about 12 entries from his real journal, some of them verbatim, but some of them she edited a little bit and changed his name to Jay. And then she wrote herself 190 entries of it. So 12 of them were his and 190 were hers. Here's some of the things that she decided to put in. One is that Jay is baptized in blood and urine, and he mutilates a cow and drinks a bucket of his blood. And then the real life deaths of his friends in car accidents are reattributed to being demons.
What the fuck?
He had some really sweet journal entries about him and his girlfriend, and those she rewrites to make it where he is having drug-fueled orgies with his girlfriend where he punches and beats her while she feeds him her blood and calls him master. I do want to disclaim I've never read Jay's journal because I have no interest in giving this, well, she's dead, but giving this woman's estate any
Yeah,
money.
fuck her.
But I know enough, you know what I mean? So the worst thing is that one of the very few genuinely sweet and happy moments in Alden's journal, the real life boy's journal, is that after a school dance, he and his girlfriend go in front of a statue in the park and they get fake married. They basically pretend that they're married. And it's really sweet, and he was a very sad person, and she decides to edit that into this is the part where when I found out about it I started to cry a little bit. She turns it into a black marriage scene where they go through a ritual of eternal slavery to another. They cut their tongues and let their blood pour into the other's mouths. And then the couple's friends pour animal blood over the couple's naked bodies while they have sex in front of everyone. And then they murder a kitten.
Where is this woman coming up with this stuff? Like, what the hell?
It also unfortunately gets worse. Even though she added so many fictional aspects to it, she still somehow neglected to adequately cover up this person's real identity. The book obviously took place in Utah County, and she kept the radio station where Alden interned. She kept the real name of that. She didn't change it. She gave pseudonyms to Alden's real friends, John, Mike, and Kim, but then she invented a new set of friends named John, Mike, and Kim. The hometown was actually Pleasant Grove, but she renamed it Apple Hill. A local restaurant, the Purple Turtle, became the Blue Moo. It was basically like she was leaving breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
And then she also included a letter from Marcella that in the journal,
The mom of
his
the son.
yeah, where anyone would recognize the writing style if they knew her. So pretty much immediately, everyone in the hometown figured out whose real journal this was, and they believed it all because it was published as a real journal. And they bullied his siblings. They desecrated his gravesite and his tombstone, which, just so you know, apparently now in present day, his tombstone is still broken and damaged. They claimed certain areas of the town were haunted by him because, you know, his satanic ghost. And the year that Jay's journal came out, Alden's school yearbook even published in their yearbook that Jay's journal was Alden's story
What the
taken
fuck?
from
I'm
his real
literally
journal.
so upset.
Yeah. So also, she did not send it to Marcella, obviously, before publishing it. And she did not, in fact, even tell Marcella that she was publishing it. Marcella first learned that Jay's journal came out when a friend called her and congratulated her on it getting published. So the Barnett family obviously confronted her and said, "Could you please publish it without all of the things that you added?" And Beatrice said that she got all of that information from interviewing his friends, and that if she released it without all of those parts, it would be a dishonest fabrication.
So she's like actually crazy.
She obviously did not interview his friends. I mean, if you can't, she could never provide any evidence of people that she got this information from or anything like that. She said that every single occult detail came from interviews with his friends, and the interviews left her so scared she couldn't even sleep at night. And she even used the Chronicle's authenticity as defense of her work, where she was basically saying the graphic scenes and the obscene language, like it proves that it's real, because I would never talk like that. And it's important that I'm writing about these troubled scenes so other kids won't have to go where they've been. They can see the price that one has to pay and make their own decision. So completely refused to release a real version of her son's journal. But Marcella was like, okay, well, it's literally so crazy that no one will believe it. Because literally cats got possessed. Jay learned how to levitate. He talked to a demon that was named Raoul.
How
But
do people believe
they
this?
still, because it was the Satanic Panic. It was the 70s. Alden's brother and sister had to deal with all of these rumors about their brother planning to dose the entire town with LSD, or that a green demonic light surrounds his tombstone. There's a chamber underneath the high school where the covens gathered and he went to cast spells. So Jay's journal quite literally haunted this poor family that had only a few years recently lost their son to suicide. This journal haunted them for the rest of their lives.
That's horrifying.
It is. In 1997, so almost 2 decades after Jay's journal was released, his younger brother self-published an account of Alden's life and the events surrounding his suicide. It's called A Place in the Sun. It's totally not in print anymore. It's not for sale anywhere. I was like trying so hard to find some clips of so we could read some of, because he included the real pieces of his brother's diary in it. And I would have loved to be able to share his actual experiences instead of her really fucked up ones. But he, talks about his brother as an aspiring poet who was really good at debate but suffered greatly from depression. And it shows images of his brother and transcripts from all of the entries in Alden's actual diary, which is what proved that she only used about a third of his real diary and all of the rest was completely fake. And like I said, the 90% that she published was entries about how Jay learned to levitate objects from Satan, developed ESP, attended midnight orgies, and was possessed by a demon named Raoul. When in fact, his diary doesn't mention the occult at all. He smoked pot, he studied Hinduism, and he had played with a Ouija board before. So really the main transgressions in the diary, the real one, is that he was rebelling against Mormon faith and he was against the Vietnam War. That was pretty much it. Yet Beatrice decided to write him as a, I mean, literally cattle mutilator
A
that
monster.
just drained 3,000 cows of their blood in 22 states. In fact, in another one of her worst things, in my opinion, nothing's worse, I think, than changing a really sweet scene of a poor, depressed kid way before mental health was ever taken seriously. Had one nice moment with his girlfriend, fake getting married. To me, almost nothing is worse than that. But she also puts his suicide note at the end of the journal, which reads, "I don't want to be sad or lonely or depressed anymore, and I don't want to eat, drink, eliminate, breathe, talk, sleep, move, feel, or love anymore. Mom and Dad, it's not your fault. I'm not free. I feel ill, and I'm sad, and I'm lonely." But before that part, which is devastating to me, she adds a few invented paragraphs about Raoul's increasing power over him, and that the suicide was not a result of depression, but of witchcraft and demons.
I'm literally sick.
It's really awful. So, based on that specific experience, I guess we could think, because just so you know, she released a lot of other
Fake
anonymous diaries. Maybe some of them were partially real like this. I hope that they're not. I hope that all of the rest are fake, because this is like one of the worst things that I can ever imagine doing or happening to me as a person.
Are they all like from the perspective of kids? What the actual fuck? This
So
lady is literally mad.
she she died in 2012, just so you know. And when she died, she was 95. But she continued writing into her 80s. Based on the fact that she did that to one family, maybe some of these are set in truth. I doubt it. And like I said, I also really hope that it's not, because I really hope that no family would have to go through something like that. We'll really never know. I mean, she's dead now.
That's
We'll never
so
know
sad.
the source or like what real things she wrote about or the real people that were affected. And we also have to acknowledge that publishers made their own decisions with this too, and that they assumed or guessed that readers would be more gripped by stories that were told from the perspective of like ghosts, basically ghosts of sad, depressed teenagers,
Yeah.
than they would be by a book that was fiction and written by a middle-aged Mormon lady. And they were obviously right. And unfortunately, publishers are still using that strategy, because even recently there was a box set released of Go Ask Alice and Jay's journal, still written anonymous.
Really?
There's no page in it that says, like, just so you know, most of this is fiction, but some of it is real. Nothing. And in her obituary, her family basically said, I mean, it's undeniably true, but also very ambiguous, in that she wrote these books to make a difference in people's lives, and she did.
Okay.
Whether it's for the better or for the worse, yeah.
That is very crazy.
It's very crazy. The book that I mentioned, Unmask Alice, goes into it a lot more in detail, but ironically enough, I think he struggles a little bit with Beatrice Sparks' disease, where some of the things that he hypothesized, I did not feel he had enough evidence for, and in fact, he claims to have been able to track down the real person that Alice might have been based on, but it was all just a bit too not totally believing it.
Yeah.
And he also said that he can't reveal his sources, and he's like, I know how that sounds. So I didn't want to get into it too much, but apparently she did work at a youth camp for a summer. And in that camp, she might have met a girl and also there's no evidence she was ever a therapist, ever a doctor,
Beatrice?
ever anything. Yeah. But she claims that she was at this youth camp as like a therapist or in some kind of capacity like that. That was probably not true, but it does appear that she did work at a camp for a summer with troubled youth. And so she met a girl there, and that girl had a friend that wrote her letters. And the girl that she knew from the camp would sometimes send the letters to Beatrice to ask her for advice on what to tell her friend.
Okay.
So
That's
that
what
might have been from his research, that might have been who Alice was maybe based
Rick
off of.
Emerson.
Yes. But I mean, not sure if it's true. Don't really think that it matters.
Yeah, I don't believe
She's,
anything Beatrice says.
yeah. And if this person is not fake, he says that she's actually also still alive today. She's
Oh,
not dead. So that's another reason he doesn't want to reveal it.
alright.
Again, who knows if that's true? I'm focusing on the worst part of the story and the part that we know that is true, which is about Alden, and
Yeah.
that's definitely the worst of it. Beatrice basically lied about literally everything in her life. There's no easy way to track down tons of information about her, obviously, because of the time period that she existed in, and she's been dead for a pretty long time now. But pretty insane that she got away with it for, I mean, her whole, always, she got away with it
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah, she did.
She was already rich, presumably became significantly more rich from this, and, you know, posed herself as a therapist that was learning about troubled kids and publishing some of their experiences to help other kids, when in fact she caused a grieving family to be ostracized and
Yeah.
horrifically bullied by their hometown.
That's horrible.
It's awful. And to this day, I still don't feel like it's common enough knowledge, you know? Because the
Yeah,
books are still not printed with her name on them. Sometimes I think they were printed with like a foreword by the therapist Beatrice Sparks, but again, she wasn't a therapist, she wasn't a doctor, she would say doctor sometimes. Sometimes the books would be published with Dr. Beatrice Sparks. She was not ever a doctor. I'm not even sure if we know that she ever graduated high school. If you recall, she dropped out of high school, and I am not sure that there's evidence that she ever went to any college.
damn. That's
Yeah,
crazy, bro.
it's pretty nuts. So she wrote one of the craziest, biggest books of the time, and all of it was fake. And then when she didn't get enough attention for it, she found a real journal and ruined a family's life.
And just got away with it and no one even did anything.
And furthered the war on drugs, furthered the satanic panic, all of those things. Looking back on the book, I tried to not make it seem really unrealistic, but I mean, doing LSD and then you shot speed in your arms, that does kind of sound like something that
It is
a,
pretty
a
insane.
Mormon lady that doesn't know anything about drugs would be like, yeah, that's what would happen.
True.
And
Yeah.
now she's tried speed, she's tried pills, everything. Now she'll go ahead and try weed for the
Yeah,
first time.
yeah, now that I know it's fake, it seems like it would be fake. Oh,
The first part of it that is the most realistic, it makes you feel like it's a real person, I think is probably because it's the only part of it that Beatrice was able to write from her own experiences. And there's a whole thing about like maybe Beatrice Sparks was gay. I don't really want to talk about any of that because I don't think that she deserves any attention, and I don't care if she was a closeted Mormon gay lady that was writing about these experiences, because you marketed it to everyone as being a real girl that
yeah, so
was
it's
someone
not.
else, so it doesn't really resonate. But I do think that the very beginning parts felt very true to life, and that was
Yeah,
probably
they
because
did.
those. And then once we get into where she's doing drugs, everything starts to be a little bit bizarre and
Yeah.
crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, that's Go Ask Alice slash Jace Journal slash Beatrice Sparks scam explanation.
Oh my
Pretty
God.
crazy stuff. I already knew some of this, but I either forgot or did not remember the extent of damage that Jay's journal did. It was very
Yeah,
shocking for me to learn that his family was so affected by
that's
it.
very, very sad.
Like at the time, I guess I knew that like his family was affected by it probably in the long term, but I did not realize that when the book came out, literally even his yearbook was like,
Yeah,
that's the guy.
that's
But I mean, why
horrible.
wouldn't they? Because she's releasing it saying that she is a doctor. She's releasing this diary of all these transcripts of patients, but it's literally pretty much not his at all. And he was just a kid that was liberal in a Mormon family and unfortunately very depressed, and obviously had no resources or any
Wow,
way to remedy his depression. It's awful.
that really is awful.
But I was glad to learn about him and learn about his brother releasing the book that was really about him. And I really am upset that there's no copies or anything available. Because, I mean, he self published it in 1997. I bet there's very few copies even out there. But I would love to read it just in for the principle
Yeah,
of
maybe
it.
we can track it down.
Yeah, so that's uh, that's Go Ask Alice.